On Christmas Eve, I saw a framed family portrait with my 9-year-old daughter's face cropped out completely. No one mentioned it. My daughter swallowed and went quiet. The next day, I handed my parents an envelope. They opened it and started screaming. I'm not someone who looks for offense in every corner. I'm a single mom, not a full-time detective. I don't have the energy to build conspiracy boards out of string and thumbtacks. Most days, I'm just trying to keep my kid fed, mostly clean and emotionally intact. So when I walked into my parents' living room on Christmas Eve and saw that frame above the fireplace, my first thought wasn't, they did this on purpose. My first thought was, because I'd seen that picture before. It was the grandparents with all the grandchildren shot, the one my mom loved because everyone was lined up and smiling and no one was blinking, which in our family counts as a minor miracle. It used to sit in a smaller frame on the side table by the lamp. I remembered it clearly because my dad had made a whole thing about getting everyone positioned just right, like he was directing a movie instead of corralling 5 kids and 2 adults who couldn't stop fussing with hair. Now it was bigger, new frame, glossy, center stage, fireplace placement, like it had achieved sainthood. And in this version, my daughter Ella wasn't there, not missing in the back, not standing behind someone's shoulder. She was cropped out, cleanly, carefully, like someone had taken their time. The background behind where her face used to be wasn't jagged or stretched. It was smoothed. The spacing was corrected. The whole thing had been reprinted. It was the kind of edit you do when you're not trying to hide the edit. You're trying to hide the person. My mom was in the kitchen, clinking dishes, calling out that dinner was almost ready. My dad was pulling off his boots like he'd just come in from the Yukon instead of his own driveway. My sister Nicole swept past me in a beige sweater that looked like it had never been exposed to a spilled drink in its life. My brother Eric was already on the couch with his phone, like sitting down was his Christmas tradition. Nicole's 2 daughters, Haley and Kenzie, were arguing about who got to sit closest to Grandma. Their brother Ethan was building a tower out of coasters. My brother's daughter Paige stood near the tree, calm and comfortable, like she already knew exactly where she belonged. Ella stopped in the doorway and looked up. I watched her face do the tiniest shift, just the smallest tightening around the mouth, like she'd tasted something sour and decided not to make a face because she didn't want anyone to notice. She swallowed, and then she went quiet. No one said, "Oh, we got a new print." No one said, "The old one was damaged." No one said anything at all. It was like the frame wasn't there. Like the empty space where my child should have been wasn't a screaming absence, but just decor. My mom called, "Shoes off! Come warm up!" I hung up our coats with hands that suddenly felt too large for my body. Ella's little scarf slipped off the hook and landed on the floor. She didn't bend to pick it up. I picked it up for her. Dinner was the usual. The same roast my mom made every year, the same rosemary smell, the same conversation loop that always landed back on Nicole. Haley's dance recital, Kenzie's gifted program, Ethan's adorable little jokes, Paige's good grades met with the kind of easy praise that didn't need to be earned twice. And Ella? Ella sat there with her fork in her hand, waiting for a moment to speak. She tried once, just once. She started to say something about a book she'd been reading. She'd been obsessed lately with those mysteries where kids solve things adults can't. When my dad cut in mid-sentence to ask Ethan if he wanted extra gravy, it wasn't shouted. It wasn't malicious in a way you can point to and report. It was worse. It was normal. My mom laughed at something Haley said. My dad told Paige she was such a good girl. Nicole leaned back and said, "I just love having everyone together." Eric said, "Yeah, family." Ella lowered her fork. After dinner, gifts came out. My mom made a show of it, handing out packages like she was hosting a charity gala. Nicole's kids opened things that were so specific it was almost impressive. Haley got the exact brand name dance bag she'd been talking about for weeks. Kenzie got a set of art markers that looked like they belonged in a museum gift shop. Ethan got a remote control car that was already halfway unboxed before anyone could finish saying, "Wow." Paige got a necklace with a little P charm. My mom teared up like she'd just cured a disease. Then my mom handed Ella a bag. It was the kind of bag you get at a drugstore. Shiny. Generic. Printed with snowflakes that didn't quite match because the bag had clearly been made in July. Inside was a craft kit. Unicorn-themed. Glitter glue. Sticker gems. A sparkle diary. Ella is not a sparkle diary kid. Ella likes chapter books and puzzles and looking up random facts about space because apparently my child was born 70 years old and curious. She stared at the bag for half a second, just long enough for me to feel my throat tighten. Then she smiled. The kind of smile kids do when they know the rules. "Thank you," she said softly. My mom beamed like she'd nailed it. I watched Ella fold tissue paper back into the bag like she was trying to undo taking up space. Later, after the house settled and everyone had migrated into that sugar coma haze, my mom offered us the guest room. Not your old room. Not you can sleep where you used to. The guest room. Beige sheets, floral curtains, a lamp that buzzed if you breathed near it. Ella climbed into bed without a word. I sat on the edge and brushed her hair the way I always do when I don't know what else to do. "Do you want to talk?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She shrugged. "It's okay." It wasn't. But she wasn't 9 because she wanted to be. She was 9 because that's how time works, and 9-year-olds learn fast what adults won't say out loud. I kissed her forehead and waited until her breathing shifted into sleep. Then I reached into my bag. The envelope was there, exactly where it had been all night. Thick. Clean. Like something official even before you open it. I turned it over in my hands once, twice. I didn't open it. I didn't reread anything. I didn't rehearse a speech. I just sat there, listening to the house creak and settle, and felt something in me settle too. In the morning, I would hand my parents that envelope, and they would scream. When people ask what it's like growing up in a family like mine, I always want to say, fine. Because that's what you learn to say. You learn to smooth it over. You learn to laugh. You learn to shrug. You learn to be the person who doesn't make it weird. Nicole was always the celebration. She could breathe in a room and my mom would notice. She could get a B+ and my dad would say, "That's my girl," like she'd just won a Nobel Prize. I remember one Christmas when Nicole unwrapped a sweater and cried, actually cried, because it was the exact shade of pink she liked. My mom hugged her, my dad clapped, and everyone acted like the world had just become a better place because Nicole had received knitwear. I had gotten a scholarship letter that week. Not a small one. The kind of thing teachers pull you aside about. When I mentioned it at dinner, my dad nodded and said, "That's good." Then he turned to Nicole and asked if she wanted more mashed potatoes. I stared at my plate and felt that familiar sensation, like I'd stepped out of frame and no one had noticed. When I looked up, my mom gave me that look and said, "Don't make it weird." It became the family anthem. Don't make it weird when Nicole gets the new car. Don't make it weird when Eric gets praised for mowing the lawn once. Don't make it weird when you're the one people call when they need help. I became a single mom the way some people become a cautionary tale. Not because I'd done something wild and dramatic, but because life doesn't always follow the timeline your parents pick out for you. Ella's dad was there at first, and then he wasn't. We tried. We failed. It wasn't a soap opera. It was just done. My mom never said, "We're ashamed." My dad never said, "We don't accept her." They didn't have to. They said things like, "Well, this isn't how we pictured it." They said, You made things complicated, when what they meant was, you didn't give us a story we can brag about. So I worked. I worked nights because days were school pickups and homework and cleaning sticky fingerprints off everything I owned. I worked at the kitchen table with a laptop glowing in the dark while Ella slept in the next room, and I told myself the same thing over and over. No one is coming. You have to be enough. Somehow it started to work. Not in a glamorous way, not in a look at my empire way, in a my bills are paid and my kid is safe way. That's when my parents came to me with the house. It was a Tuesday when my mom called, voice too bright, like she was trying to sell me something. "Can you come by?" she asked. "We need to talk." When I got there, my dad had papers spread out on the table like we were about to launch a legal defense. There was a letter with words like past due and final notice. They had a deadline. They had no good options. And suddenly, I was the solution. "We just need a temporary fix," my mom said quickly. "We'll get caught up." My dad added, "It's paperwork, that's all. A formality." The lender wanted the deed in the name of the person qualifying for the refinance. That person was me. My credit was decent. My income was stable. My life, for once, looked neat enough on paper to pass. So I signed. I sat at that same kitchen table where my scholarship letter had been ignored, and I signed documents that put my parents' house in my name. I kept copies, because I'm Megan, and I'm not reckless. I'm the kind of person who saves receipts. My mom hugged me after, eyes damp, voice soft. "Thank you," she said. "We'll take it from here. Next month." Next month became the running joke that stopped being funny. The first time I covered a payment, it was because my dad had a delay at work. The second time, my mom said, the car needed repairs. The third time, it was something else. Every time I asked when they'd start paying, I got the same answer dressed up in a new outfit. Soon, next month. After the holidays, once things settle. Years passed without anyone saying out loud what was happening. They didn't want to lose the house, and they didn't want to change their lives, and I didn't want to be the reason the family home fell apart. So I paid. And I told myself it was still temporary, and I kept waiting for the moment they'd recognize what I was doing. Waiting is a strange hobby, but it's one I got very good at. Standing under that portrait on Christmas Eve, watching Ella go quiet, I realized something with a clarity so sharp it almost hurt. I had been propping up this house for years, and inside it, my daughter had been edited out like she was a mistake someone was trying to erase. Christmas morning smelled like cinnamon and denial. My mom had the coffee going. My dad was in a good mood, the kind of good mood he gets when everything is going the way he likes it. Nicole had her phone out, angling for pictures that looked spontaneous but definitely weren't. Eric was wearing the same hoodie he always wears, like effort was optional. The portrait stayed above the fireplace. Still unmentioned. Still pretending. Ella sat cross-legged near the tree, hands folded in her lap, watching the other kids tear through wrapping paper. She smiled when Haley squealed. She clapped when Ethan made his car do a ridiculous little spin. She didn't look up. I didn't tell her to. I didn't nudge her into being cheerful for other people's comfort. When there was a natural pause, when my mom was refilling mugs and my dad was making a joke about how he should have bought stock in batteries, I reached into my bag. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. I handed it to my parents like I was passing a plate. My mom looked down at it, frowning like it might be a bill. "What's this?" "It's from me," I said. My dad smiled. "You didn't have to get us anything." I nodded. "I know." My mom's fingers slid under the flap. She didn't ask again. She didn't wait. She opened it like she had the right. The second her eyes hit the first page, the room changed. My dad leaned in. My mom's face tightened. Her mouth opened and closed once like she was trying to find the correct tone to use. Then my dad's voice rose. "What is this?" My mom's voice followed, higher, sharper. "Megan, no, no!" Nicole sat up straighter. "What's going on?" Eric frowned. "Megan, what did you do?" My dad slapped the papers down like they'd burned him. "This is our house," he snapped. My mom's hands were shaking now, not with sadness, with anger. "We asked you for a favor." My dad's voice cut through the room. "You can't do this. Not on Christmas." Nicole shook her head like I'd personally ruined her holiday photo set. "This is insane." Eric's voice went flat. "You always do this. You always have to make it weird." I looked at Ella. She was watching me, not with panic, with that careful stillness kids get when they're bracing. I kept my voice low, controlled. "I'm not doing this to you," I said, looking at my parents. "You've been doing this to me for years." My mom's eyes flashed. "After everything?" "After everything," I repeated softly. "Exactly." Nicole started talking over me, something about timing and how this was unhinged. Eric added that I was being dramatic, because of course he did. I didn't argue about the portrait. I didn't point at the fireplace like a courtroom lawyer. I said one thing, the only thing that mattered. "I'm done funding a house where my child is being erased." Then I stood, put my hand on Ella's shoulder, and helped her up. My mom shouted my name like she could pull me back by force of sound. My dad yelled something about gratitude. Nicole called me cruel. Eric said, "If you walk out, don't bother coming back." Ella's hand found mine, small and warm and steady. We walked out anyway. The cold air outside felt clean. We got into the car. I started the engine. Ella stared out the window, silent. Halfway down the street, my phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. By the time we pulled into our apartment parking lot, there were missed calls, voicemails, texts. Then a message from a cousin I hadn't heard from in months. "Is it true you stole the house?" A second message popped up from my aunt. "Your mom says you tricked them into signing. Please tell me that's not true." And then the family group chat lit up like a Christmas tree. Nicole's name appeared. Eric's name appeared. Words started flying. Ella glanced at my phone when it buzzed again, and I watched her swallow. I turned the screen face down. "Hey," I said gently. "Let's go inside. Hot chocolate?" She nodded once. I told myself I could handle the noise. I just had to keep it from reaching her. It took a few days for the adrenaline to drain out of my bones. A few days of me ignoring voicemails, silencing the group chat, and answering Ella's questions in careful pieces. "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad?" "Yes," I said. "But grown-ups being mad doesn't mean you did anything wrong." "Did I do something wrong?" I swallowed that rage back down because it belonged to me, not her. "No," I said. "Not ever." On the fourth day, there was a knock at my door. Not the friendly neighbor knock, not the package delivery knock, the official kind. I opened it and saw a police officer standing in my hallway. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like my body forgot how gravity works. "Ma'am," he said, professional and neutral. "Are you Ms. Hensley?" He checked a small notepad. "Megan Hensley?" "Yes," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "We need to ask you a few questions." The hallway suddenly felt too small, too exposed. My apartment behind me looked like a child's home, which it was, and the idea of anything threatening crossing that threshold made my skin go cold. The officer glanced past me just slightly. "Is there anyone else in the home?" "My daughter," I said. "She's in her room." He nodded once. "Okay, we're following up on a complaint. Your parents contacted us." I blinked. About what? The officer looked down again. They're alleging fraud. They're claiming you tricked them into signing paperwork and that you took their house. For a second, I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't understand. Because I did. It was just unreal to hear it said out loud by someone wearing a badge. I didn't trick anyone, I said finally. He asked questions, practical ones. When did the title transfer happen? What was the arrangement? Did they understand? Were there messages? Was an attorney involved? I answered carefully, factually. I told him I had documents. I told him the house was in my name. I told him I could provide proof. He took notes. At the end, he said something that sounded reasonable and still landed like a weight. This may end up being a civil matter, he said, but we have to document the allegation. When he left, I shut the door and leaned my forehead against it for a second, breathing like I'd just run a mile. Then I stood up straight before Ella could see me shaking. I walked into her room where she was sitting on the floor with a book open, pretending she hadn't been listening. Hey, I said softly. You okay? She nodded too fast. Was that about us? It's grown-up paperwork, I said, keeping my voice calm. You're safe. She stared at the page without reading it. I made hot chocolate and put on a movie and sat beside her on the couch like my body wasn't still humming with anger. A week later, the letter came. Heavy paper. Expensive letterhead. Kessler Law Group. I didn't know Mr. Kessler, but I could feel his personality through the envelope. Crisp. Confident. Designed to intimidate. The letter accused me of deception, of undue influence, of taking advantage of trust and age. It demanded I stop harassing my parents with eviction proceedings. It threatened further action. It gave me a deadline like I was a child who'd missed homework. I read it once. Then again, slower, because fear makes you reread things like the words might change. Then I did what I should have done years ago. I stopped handling my family like it was a personal project I could fix if I just tried harder. I called Ms. Harper, the lawyer I'd been trying not to need. Ms. Harper's office was quiet, in a way my parents' house never was. No performative cheer, no hovering, just a woman with calm eyes who listened without flinching when I said, "My parents called the police." She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She didn't say, "But they're your parents." She asked, "Do you have documents?" I slid a folder across her desk. I had texts, emails, the ones my mom and dad had sent when they were panicking and needed my signature. "We need you to do this in your name for the refinance. It's just a formality. We'll handle the payments next month." I had the closing documents, the copies I'd kept because I keep copies, and I had the payment trail. Years of it. The temporary help that had quietly turned into my money, month after month, keeping their roof overhead. Ms. Harper flipped through everything with a kind of calm that felt like oxygen. "They're claiming I tricked them," I said, and my voice cracked on the last word, because it was still my parents, and it was still a betrayal even if it wasn't surprising. Ms. Harper looked up. "We can respond to that." "Do we go to court?" I asked. "Not necessarily," she said. "A lot of people stop pushing once they realize what's going to come out." She sent a response to Mr. Kessler. She didn't write a speech. She wrote a fact pattern, and then something shifted. Not immediately, not cleanly, but I felt it. Mr. Kessler's tone softened. Deadlines became requests. Threats became inquiries. Silence stretched longer between messages. It was like watching someone realize the story they were selling wasn't going to hold. The legal pressure started to back off. The social pressure, though, that got worse. Because when people can't win with paperwork, they try to win with shame. The family group chat turned into a trial. Nicole posted that I was suing our parents, which I wasn't, but accuracy has never been her hobby. Eric chimed in with something about how Dad did everything for us, which was hilarious because Dad couldn't even remember my scholarship. Relatives piled on with opinions and Bible verses and the kind of moral outrage people love when it doesn't cost them anything. And Ella was watching me. Maybe not every word, but enough. Enough to see my jaw clench when my phone buzzed. Enough to hear my tone go tight when I said, "It's fine." And it wasn't. So I stopped. I didn't argue point by point. I didn't explain my childhood. I didn't beg for fairness. I waited until the chat hit peak volume, and then I posted something short. 2 screenshots of my mom's messages calling it a formality. 1 screenshot of my dad asking if I could cover this month and promising next month for sure. And 1 clean proof of the payment history. Not a story, not a rant, just years stacked in a line. Then I set my phone down and made dinner for my child. When I picked it up an hour later, the chat was quiet. Not quiet because they understood. Quiet because there was nothing left to say without looking like a liar. A few private messages had come in. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I can't believe they did that." I didn't respond to most of them. Not because I was angry, because I was tired. And because Ella was sitting at the table next to me, coloring, humming softly under her breath for the first time in days. That mattered more than winning anyone's approval. Time does what it always does. It moves forward whether people behave or not. My parents moved out. I didn't hear it from them. Of course I didn't. I heard it from my aunt, who called like she was delivering weather. "They're in a little place now," she said carefully. "A rental." I pictured my mom in a small kitchen with no fireplace to hang a portrait above. I pictured my dad in a living room with thin walls and neighbors who didn't care about his opinions. I didn't feel triumph. I felt quiet. Nicole called me 2 weeks after that. Her voice was softer than usual, which on Nicole is a full personality shift. "We should talk," she said. Eric texted. Something vague about moving forward. I could hear the subtext without effort. Now that my parents' story had collapsed in front of everyone, being on their side wasn't socially convenient anymore. Now reconciliation was a brand refresh. I didn't yell. I didn't write an essay. I said, "No, thank you," and I meant it. Then Ella and I moved into the house. I carried in the first box, set it down, and did the thing you do in a new place. Looked around. The portrait was still above the fireplace, still glossy, still wrong. I stood there for a second, Ella beside me, and I felt something in my chest loosen. Not rage, not grief, just release. I took it down. No ceremony, no dramatic music. Just hands on a frame, lifting it off the wall, setting it face down on the floor. Ella watched quietly. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked. "I'm going to get rid of it," I said. She nodded like that made sense, like a child understands more than adults give them credit for. We painted the living room a warm color that didn't feel like my mom's taste. We cleared out furniture that had held too many holidays that didn't belong to me. We opened windows and let the air change. Ella picked her room. She ran from one bedroom to the other like she was finally allowed to choose something. She laughed, loud, unself-conscious. I hung a new photo above the fireplace. Just me and Ella, standing in front of the house with paint samples in our hands, both of us smiling like we hadn't had to fight for our own existence. No one edited. No one cropped. No one erased. And in the quiet that followed, real quiet, the kind that doesn't have a threat underneath it, I realized what I'd actually done. I hadn't just taken back a house. I'd ended a pattern. Ella didn't have to learn how to swallow her feelings to keep the peace, because I finally stopped asking her to live inside a family that required her to disappear, and that, more than the deed, More than the renovations, more than the silence in the group chat, was the only thing that ever mattered. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.